Hello there, boys and girls. Welcome again to iTTV. In today's lesson, I'll be further explaining to you about the concepts of parallel lines and transversals, particularly the calculations that we will go in further. There are plenty of calculations that we'll be doing for today's lesson. Well, boys and girls, let us now look into our first question in today's lesson. If you look into the diagram given here, the question wants us to find the values of both K and M. Question is, how am I going to find the value of K and M? For this question, you have to look into the diagram properly. What are the steps? Firstly, you have to identify that there are two parallel lines here. Let me mark it in red so that you will be able to see them clearer. We have this line across. We have this line across here. So therefore, line CE and AB are parallel lines. That is the first step. Next, you have to see to find the value of K, which is inside a triangle. But at the same time, K is also located on this parallel line. So therefore, you have to see that these two are parallel lines. To find the value of K, you must quickly, at the back of your head, try to identify what is K, whether K is a corresponding angle, or could it be an interior angle, or K could it be an alternate angle. Now, let us find the solution. If I look very closely to K, I can observe that there are two lines going here. Now, if you look at this line cutting across, this line CO is known as the transversal, if you remember this. CO is the transversal of AB and CE. Once you have identified that, then you look very closely that this picture seems to be a Z in formation. This looks like a Z. So therefore, what is the letter Z carries? Z being the alternate angle. So therefore, K is an alternate. K is an alternate angle. Now the issue of alternate angle, like we have discussed in our earlier lesson, is when you're dealing with alternate angles, their values are equal. Therefore, K will also carry the value of 45 degrees. Therefore, K, the value would be 45 degrees because K is an alternate angle. It's that simple. Okay. Let us now turn our attention to the issue of angle M. Angle M, it's not that difficult either. Why? Because if you look at angle M, it is also located on a parallel line. Now, in mathematics, you must use all the information given. If any one of the information not used, you would not be able to find the values. Likewise, for M, I can see that there are two parallel lines here. So I'm going to put a line across these two parallel lines. And what can you see? You can see that it is forming a squarish U. When you talk about a squarish U, we are talking about an interior angle. So therefore, M is actually an interior angle. What is the concept of interior angles? Concepts of interior angles are the sum of the interior angles must be equivalent to 180 degrees. Therefore, M plus 88 should give you 180 degrees. This is the sum. So therefore, in order for us to obtain the value of m, so m should give you as 180 less 88 degrees. So therefore, m should read as 92 degrees. So this is how we find the value of m. So can you see in this particular question, two types of angles are coming into play. Firstly, alternate angles for k, and next, interior angles for m. So this is how you tackle questions dealing with parallel lines. Well, boys and girls, I hope you have taken down some important notes here. Now, let us turn our attention to question number 2. Question 2 sounds like this. Find the values of the unknown angles in the diagram above. Well, boys and girls, if you look into the unknown values here, that would be the value of x and the value of y. So how am I going to tackle this question? Let's turn to value of x first. So boys and girls, how do I find the value of x? The first step for this question is, I have to notice that there are two parallel lines. Let me draw them out in red first. This is the first step. I need to identify these two parallel lines. Why is it important? Because when you're dealing with parallel lines, you have to identify which two lines are parallel. So in this question, we have these two lines being parallel. Now, on further examination, we note that between these two parallel lines, I can draw another line like this. Now, if you look this very closely, you find that this is actually an interior angle. Why is it so interior? Because this is a squarish U. Now, therefore, x is an interior angle. Concepts of interior angle is the sum of the angles would produce 180 degrees. Therefore, what is the value of x then? So, x plus 89 would give you 180 degrees. So therefore, x will give you 180 degrees minus 89 degrees. X is equivalent to 91 degrees. This is how you find for x. It is that simple. Why? Now you are able to identify the type of angles. So you see, in different questions, different type of angles can come about. In this question, we are dealing with interior angles. If you remember in our earlier question, we were dealing with alternate angles. Now, what about the issue of y? Can I solve y using the same concept? Now, for y, it is a bit more trickier. Why is it more trickier? Is because if you look very closely, the position of y is actually inside a triangle. If you look all this closely, it is actually a triangle. Now, for concepts of triangle, you know the sum of angles in a triangle is actually amounts to 180 degrees. Now, therefore, I know x is equals to 91 degrees. And I know this is a triangle. So therefore, angle 50, angle x and angle y, if I add them up all together, it must produce 180 degrees. This is the first step in finding for y. So the calculation would be y at x plus your 50 should give you 180 degrees. As we know earlier, x was 91 degrees. So y at 91 at 50 is equals to 180 degrees. To find for y, I bring all this total over the other side. So y plus 141 is equals to 180 degrees. So y therefore is equals to 180 less 141 degrees. Y should give you 39 degrees. So you see, in this question, it's a bit more different in the sense they have incorporated the issue of triangles. So in order for us to do questions dealing with parallel lines, you must also know the properties of triangles. In this question particularly, we are dealing with the total amount of the interior angles of your triangles. That means the sum of angles in a triangle will produce 180 degrees. Let us say a student who is attempting this question would be able to answer X. But if that student does not understand the concept of triangles, definitely he would not be able to answer for Y. So therefore, when you deal with mathematics, you must at your fingertips know all the properties of that particular lesson. So I hope you have taken down this important note here, especially angle Y. Angle Y, in order for us to find, we have to find the total values of the angle in a triangle. So boys and girls, let's look into question 3. Find the values of the lettered angles. When you talk about the lettered angles here, we are talking about the value of X and the value of Y. How are we going to attempt to solve this problem here? If we look into the angle X, it is located on this parallel line. I always stress the point, in order for us to attempt this type of questions, we have to identify where are the parallel lines are. In this question, it would be this particular line here and this line here. So therefore, we have two parallel lines. The next point to ponder here, what do we call this line here? If you remember in our earlier lessons, I mentioned to you that this particular line is known as the transversal. Let me draw this a bit thicker. That would be the transversal. So we have two parallel lines and a transversal cutting across. To find the value of X, let's see how can we use 135 degrees to our advantage. Is 135 degrees relevant in finding the value of X? That is the question that I'm posing to you, students. How am I going to find X then? If you look closer, X is actually in the form of Z. To find the value of X, it is actually a Z type of angle. And when you talk about Z type of angle, we are talking about alternate angles. So therefore, X is actually an alternate angle. When you talk about alternate angles, the concept is alternate angles are equal. Therefore, the value of X is equivalent to 135 degrees. So X will produce 135 degrees. It is that simple. What did we do? Firstly, we identified the two parallel lines, the transversal. Step 3, we identified how 135 and the X value are related. They are related in the form as alternate angles, and the value would be 135. Now, let us consider for Y value. If you look into Y, obviously at the back of your head, you will be asking this question, why 93 degrees is in existence there? There is a purpose. Now, on closer examination, you will find that, like I've mentioned earlier, these two lines are parallel. these two parallel lines are linked by this bridge, this line here. So on closer examination, we find that this forms a U-shaped type of angle. U-shaped type of angle is known as the interior angle. So therefore, Y is actually an interior angle. Concepts of interior angle is the sum of the interior angle will produce 180 degrees. So therefore, Y plus 93 degrees is equivalent to 180 degrees. Now, did you understand what I said just now? Did you understand what I said just now? The sum of interior angles must produce 180 degrees. Therefore, Y plus 93 must give you 180 degrees. So how do I find Y? Y then, the value is 180 degrees less 93 degrees. Y is equivalent to 87 degrees. So therefore, if you look into this particular question, we are dealing with two different concepts here. That being alternate angles and interior angles. So different questions will give us different solution. And in order for us to attempt these questions, you must be well versed in all types of angles. Well, now let's look into the next question. Well, boys and girls, let us look to question 5. Find the values of the lettered angles. In this question, we have both x and y values that need to be found. This is a very interesting question. Why is it interesting? I'll be explaining to you shortly. But in order for us to attempt this question to find the values of x and y, there is only one angle that has been given, that is 141 degrees. So how are we going to solve this problem? Now, there are two important features in this diagram. Firstly, you have to note that there are two parallel lines here and here. Because we are dealing with parallel lines, we have to identify these parallel lines first. Now, the next question is, we note that this is a triangle. Question is, what type of triangle is this? Now, in our earlier discussions or in your earlier revision with your teachers, I'm sure you have understood there are basically three types of triangles, that being an equilateral triangle, an isosceles triangle, and a scalene triangle. In this question, we are dealing with an isosceles triangle. What is an isosceles triangle? If you look into this marking here, what they are trying to suggest here is, when you are dealing with this triangle, isosceles triangle, the value of this portion is equivalent to this side of the triangle. Therefore, by looking at this statement here, it will be definitely wise for us to find the value on this side first. Why is it so? If I can manage to find this value, therefore, since it is an isosceles triangle, this value will be equivalent to the value of y. This is the first step. So how am I going to find this value here? If you note, this is a parallel line, and we know parallel lines are straight lines. And the concepts of straight lines are, the sum of angles on a straight line is 180 degrees. So let me say I give an alphabet to this particular angle. Let us say I name it as A for calculation purpose. In order for me to find y, I find A first. So therefore, since it is a straight line, so A plus 141 degrees will give me 180 degrees. So A therefore is equals to 180 less 141 degrees, and A should read as 39 degrees. That is the value of A. But we should not stop there, because what is y then? That is the question. So therefore, since this is an isosceles triangle, the value of y must be equals to a. So y is equals to a degrees, and it must be equal to 39 degrees as well. This is how we will find for the value of y. The steps, let me summarize. Firstly, you have to find the value of a. To find the value of a, since a is on a straight line, the sum of angles on a straight line must produce 180 degrees. We get a first. The next step is, since this is an isosceles triangle, both the values of y and a are equivalent. Therefore, the value of y must be read as 39 degrees. Now, let's turn our attention to the value of x. How can I find the value of x? If you look closer for x, what we can observe here is we have two parallel lines here. Can I use concepts of parallel lines to solve the problem for x? On closer observation, it seems to be a bit more difficult. This is because although I may have these parallel lines, I cannot use a u. That means I can't use these lines here as an interior angle to solve the problem, because I may know y, but x is only up to here. It is not the entire angle. So therefore, properties of parallel lines cannot help in this question. So how can we solve? Going back to basics, we are going to use the triangle concept here. So how are we going to solve this? I mentioned this earlier. Since y carries 39 degrees and a is also 39 degrees, so therefore x, what is the value? Now, concept of x is the sum of angles in a triangle must give you 180 degrees. So let us settle for x. To find for x, x plus 39, this 39 is from y, and added that to 39 from a must give you 180 degrees. So to settle for x, x plus 78 must give you 180. So x value is 180 less 78. X is therefore 102 degrees. So students, if you look very closely in these questions that we have been attempting, most of the time they will somehow incorporate questions on parallel lines together with triangles. This is how the examiner will test you in your coming exams. So students, boys and girls, I hope you have understood our lesson today. Some easy calculation dealing with parallel lines and triangles. I hope to see you in the next exciting lesson. We'll be talking more about the calculation, more sophisticated calculation under this topic. Until then, good day from me.